Hey Rod, what's going on? Long time no chat.
Man, a lot has been going on. A lot has been going on. Yeah, with the Niners and with me. Yeah, so it is good to be back. Well, obviously we just hasn't been really much to talk about, but hell,
Yeah.
I had they cracked my chest open and replaced
Oh
my heart valve and shit.
my goodness. How are
A
you
month,
feeling, by the way?
great. It's a month tomorrow, and I am back walking. Still can't go to the gym. That's about another month away. I'm weak from being able to start driving again.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel great. I never didn't feel great. It was I had this little weird thing with my arm, and I was playing golf and my arm started hurting and I was like short of breath for like no apparent. I'm just walking. It wasn't like I
Hmm.
was running a marathon, but I was like really, really like laboring. Um, and then it went away. Then I went to walk the dog later in the day. Same thing happened. Called the doctor. They scheduled an appointment with the cardiologist. Told my brothers. They're like, nah, take your ass to the ER like right now. They did. They admitted me. And 7 days later, I had a new heart valve. It's crazy. And again, but at no point did I ever like feel bad. I mean, I feel great. And so the healing is going well. I'm hitting all the benchmarks. So yeah, I'm good. And I'm glad to be here with you guys. So yeah, if you listen real close, you can hear my heart ticking. But anyway, it sounds like a clock. But yeah, we're all good.
That's good, man. That is really good news.
Yep.
Like you had like sent me a note and you said, that maybe, you'll be ready in a week or whatever. And then I was like, oh, like this sounds like really serious. And you like you
Yeah.
you downplayed it a little bit, I'm sure. But we had kind of planned to do something pre-draft, but then just
Hmm.
decided, let's just come back post-draft. So, but I'm very happy to hear that you're feeling good. So that
Yeah.
is a positive.
Yep. Yep.
So I guess where do we start? I think we start because I don't think you can tell the story of the first two nights of the draft without the Brandon Ayuk story, which is right now they have not re-signed him. He is up for the extension, and it's going to be a big extension because I mean, have you seen some of these wide receiver deals that are happening?
The market is running away from him, and that was a concern I mentioned at the end of last season. Is that
Yes.
these numbers are not going to go down? So if you want him, you probably I get it. I understand that you've got the 5th year option and you don't have to feel pressed. But as we've seen, we are way beyond the number that it would have been if they had done something sooner. Though that time is gone. So it looks like now that 30 million a year is almost like a floor, because if you wait until next off season,
Yeah. A- And the thing about it is he will not even allow that to happen because he'll probably just hold out and he'll not even play. That's kind of like the thing, right? Is like the risk is these guys just say, "Well, I'm just not going to play," and then it forces you to come back to the table. I don't think Brandon would sit out the entire year, but he would definitely do, what Debo and what
training
Nick
camp.
what Nick did, and it is use as leverage. And then there can be a little bit of an acrimonious relationship. We saw that happen with Debo. We didn't really see it happen with Nick, but Nick knew, and
Right.
the Niners knew too. It's like they waited so long to do it, just maybe for the look of it, so that it didn't look like they were completely catering to the player. But we knew that had to be done. The Niners are not the Niners without Nick Bosa. And similarly, you know, maybe Brandon Ayuk is not as a valuable of a player as Nick Bosa because of that position, but is a very valuable player. And same
Well,
with
what do you
Debo.
do with those 25% of the targets? I mean, I guess you could just, I mean, I don't know. I don't. I mean, I love JJ, but I don't think that he's as good a wide receiver as BA.
I
So
don't
I mean, I
know.
think that you can just transfer those 25% of the targets to him and think that the offense just keeps chugging
Yeah.
the way that it has. He's a completely different kind of player than Brandon Ayuk.
Okay,
And
here's a question. Here's a question. Deep down inside, if you were to have a scotch with Kyle Shanahan and you were like kind of buttering him up a little bit, like, come on, Kyle, you could take some average wide receivers and get them numbers, right? Like, what do you think he would say?
he would probably say, yeah. I mean, I think that's just that. I
Because
think that's just
there's
how they're built. Because hell,
there,
I think Kyle and his cohort of coaches think that about the quarterback. I
yeah,
think that I don't think that they feel like they need Patrick Mahomes to make what they do work.
yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking is there's gotta be a little bit of hubris involved here of like, we're kind of kingmakers in a sense, and our system is very valuable to these players, and they should wanna come here, and they should wanna play here because, what does Debo look like, if he wasn't used the way that he was used 2 years ago? He probably doesn't get that big time money. Now, could somebody else use him that way? Yeah, Kyle Shanahan's not the
At
only offensive genius.
and at this point, it's like Gremlins. Those Kyle Shanahan offenses are like popping
Yeah.
up all over the
I
place.
mean, we saw it
Everybody.
you saw it with, Washington use their last pick in the 3rd round to get baby McCaffrey, who the Niners were kind of linked to before they drafted, Pearsall, which we'll talk about in a second.
So
But
now,
le
like you got Houston, you've got Washington, you've got the Titans, you've got Atlanta, that are all this season going to the Shanahan offense in some form or another. So yeah, it's just these players are going to have places to go, and then I'll let you finish your point. And then I think I want to spin into something else before we move forward, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
and I guess my thought was just what you said. Like, how much of that conversation about Debo yesterday that we were told was happening? Because
Right.
first it was, will they trade Ayuk? And then later in the day, it shifted to Debo as being the person who they were on the phones about. And
Which
how much of that was them going to Houston, going like, we know you want to do this. Well, here's the guy to do it. What do you have to give us? And it just didn't look it sounds like if it was serious that the offers just weren't as good as, as
and
as
they've
what
kind
they
of they've
wanted.
kind of got they've kind of got Tank Dell, who is Debo light.
But and
So
also, and one more thing, also, if you're those other teams, like what is your counter? It's like, well, is it Debo, or are you guys just good at getting him open?
mhm.
How's his health? Did you already run him into the ground? Like all of those conversations are also happening. So that whole chess match ends up in a bit of a stalemate because they didn't move either guy, and then they go out and draft a wide receiver with their first pick. But go ahead with your point.
I'm taking it back to the double A thing. What and it's kind of holistically about this whole thing. There's a report that comes out that like 2 or 3 days before the draft that they assured Debo he wasn't going to be traded during the draft. And then the rumors come out that he is being, at least they're taking calls, which I guess they got to answer the phone. So, I mean, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. They could tell him we're not going to trade him because they haven't yet, but they could also listen to calls. So, but I just, my question is, how does this front office do they care about how they're viewed? And I use that through the lens of the double A contract debacle.
Yeah.
They fucking offered him 6 million with incentives to 8 when they had to know because his team knew that he had a okay. Let's start from the place that 18
By the
million.
way, just so people know, you're talking about Eric Armstead, double
Yes,
A. You're not talking about the enforcer, Arn Anderson of the Four Horsemen. So just to be
shout
clear.
out to Arn Anderson. But yeah, I mean, okay, 18 million wasn't going to happen. They knew it. His team knew it. They're
Yes.
talking. But his team knew, if his team knew, they had to know that his market was closer to 13 or 14 because that's what he ended up getting. Why, if you know that, do you, okay, I get it. Even if you don't want to be in the Eric Armstead business at 13 or 14 million dollars, then why do you offer 6 to 8? Why don't you just shake hands and say, look, we want to move on. It's best for you to go ahead, and you can go ahead and find something at the beginning of free agency. We'll release a joint press statement and we'll just kind of go our separate ways. Why the fuck do you offer him? Why do you come to the offer to the table with such a low ball offer? It seems like Parag is just fucking Rain Man. He doesn't know how to deal with people. Obviously, he's smart and is good at his job, but that just doesn't, it just reeks of somebody who doesn't understand the people part of this business. What do you gain by lowballing him? It doesn't make any sense, short term or long term, unless you just don't fucking care what people think about you. And I guess that maybe is what it is. I don't
And
know.
is the larger concern that other players may look at how they treated Armstead, and it may give them thoughts if they have competing offers that, maybe
But
we
this
go
is
elsewhere.
not old news. Everybody, what the sycophants will say, well, they eventually signed everybody, but everybody from Warner to Kittle to Deebo, all
The
of them
first
have
offers.
a low ball offer story.
Yeah.
What do you gain by that? What do you think they're just going to sign it? I mean, I just don't understand the rationale. Why?
This is a thought I have about football in general, but you will never see that happen in baseball. One, because baseball doesn't have a true salary cap. There are sort of caps at, you get taxed if you hit a certain dollar amount. But you would never, if you were, and I watched this happen. The Giants have been in on all of these free agents over the last few years. Hey, Aaron Judge, it's not Aaron Judge. We're going to offer you something less than the other team is offering. It's, hey, Aaron Judge, we need to wine and dine you to see how interested you are in us. And then Aaron Judge goes, yeah, I'm really interested. But in the back of his mind, he's like, I'm only kind of interested because I want to leverage you against the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Shohei Ohtani.
If you blow the Yankees out of the water, theoretically, I mean, if you put 25% on top of what the Yankees are offering, I'm sure.
Which is what I was like, hey, why don't we do that? If we can't win the competitive offer, why don't we just go wild on the guy that we want? But
I'm not a Giants fan, but it's like, why couldn't they do that deal with Ohtani?
Well, yeah, right. and so here's the thing: is it sounds like they were willing, and they got up to what the Dodgers were going to do, and then it was just like, pick the team, and he's like, well, if it's the same, then I'm going to pick the Dodgers, and maybe it was going to be the Dodgers unless the Giants went wildly over.
Yeah, if you say 25 million more, I mean, but at what point?
Ipe would have just gambled it all away. So Shohei's like, what do I care?
So yeah, I mean, it's like, that's an interesting analogy about.
But so this doesn't happen in baseball because the players have all the leverage in baseball. They have more leverage. If you're a superstar, you have the leverage. In hoop, how many times has Kevin Durant or James Harden been like, I want to go here, I don't want to be here anymore? And usually it happens because you don't want to be the franchise that says, we're not going to do this for this guy when in 5 years, a guy like that may want to come to your team, right? So You're,
And then,
you're,
you know, it seems like what the conversation always is do we go full max or not? It's not like like you say again, there's no like low ball offer. It's just
yeah.
like, are you going to go the full max?
The low ball offer is to the guy who's looking to win a championship,
Mm-hmm.
who has made his money. But in football, these guys, and I'm going to use this term very loosely because us normal humans look at that money and we go, "Come on." The football players are nickel and dimed
Mm-hmm.
to death unless you are a quarterback, unless you are a Nick Bosa like edge, or unless you are a top receiver. Like, those are the positions that are able to leverage these, these teams. Now, can defensive tackle, can Eric Armstead be one of those guys to come to the Niners and go, "Hey," if he was a couple of years and a couple of injuries younger, maybe he could be one of those guys to just, kind of move them around, kind of like these wide receivers, Aiyuk and Deebo have been able to do. But that they have chosen that position as a position in which they believe that they could just keep drafting people. Like we saw it with Buckner. They were like, "Oh, we're going to turn him in," and then they bring in Kinlaw, and that
Mm-hmm.
probably holds us back
Mm-hmm.
from, another really good team, because Kinlaw wasn't that guy.
Which I understand if you decide that you can't have both and you've got to pay one. I people still hindsight talk about we should have kept Buckner. You're not getting a first round pick for Eric Armstead. You're
No.
just not. So yeah, so they traded the one that they felt that was the move. I'm not saying that whether it's right or wrong because I just don't play hindsight. I mean, it's easy to to determine that what they should have done, 5 years afterwards. But yeah, it's just odd how we just go about doing our business. And the whole BA thing, okay. All right. So do we want to do the draft or do we want to
Well, I
do we
think
want to talk all things Niners? Because I've got thoughts.
this is leading into this, trying to understand this first pick, but this conversation with Brandon Aiyuk and then Deebo, I think, kind of leads us into a conversation about who they drafted. And I'm still a little boggled that they took a wide receiver with their first pick, and someone who it seemed like they could have actually traded down into the second round to draft. So that's kind of, it boggles my mind. But yeah, let's keep talking about these guys.
I don't because again, what I don't want this to seem like I do kind of question Pearsall as a player either way, because if you're keeping those dudes, he is Rayway McLeod. And why are you spending your first round pick on Rayway McLeod? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Is he Ray McLeod, or do they think he's Julian Edelman?
Okay. I mean, I guess what I just as which again, this is where I'm leading to. I can see a world where he is that, but the question that I guess I keep asking, and it kind of all coalesces together, is I have never felt when I have looked at all of the transactions that have happened this off season, what I feel is that maybe I am doing a bar crawl in New Orleans on Frenchman Street, and I look at all these transactions, and I have that Dave Coulion usual suspects moment where the coffee cup drops, and all of it just all makes sense. But sitting here on April 26th, this doesn't seem like a team that feels like they're trying to gear back up to get to New Orleans. This seems like a team who is preparing for in 2 years having to pay a quarterback $50 million, and a team that is, I'm not saying that they're tanking this season, but I think that they are looking ahead to what this team looks like when you don't have 4 all pro um weapons. But see, even that doesn't make sense to me, because if I had to pick, Aiyuk would be the one that I would want to move forward with, because let's be real. I thought that Armageddon was going to be next season,
Mhm.
and that this season was going to be the last dance, and we gonna make one more ride and make one more run at it, and then the tough decision needs to be made. I don't think George is here next year. I can see Deebo not being here next year. But if I had to, so I say that to say, if I were to pick one of these guys to be the bridge from the pre $50 million Brock to the post $50 million Brock, based on his talent and his age, it would be BA. He would be
Mhm.
the guy I would be wanting to hitch my horse to.
Mhm.
I don't, and unless they know something I don't see that, and I don't see Pearsall ever being. I've heard on the forums of the glass half full people talking about Cooper Cup.
Well,
Okay,
I mean, yeah,
okay.
if you think
They're
about
both white. I mean that's
okay, so
there's
Cooper's
that.
a little bigger. Ricky's faster. As far as some of these other skills, I wouldn't know. I've been watching Cooper Cup kill us for the last
Hmm.
4 years. I haven't really seen Ricky play. So, but in the guise of who beats you up, like if that is who you think he has a possibility of being, sure. I said Edelman because I look at Edelman as he never came in to be a one. He kind
Hmm.
of came in and was like a 3 or 4 and then turned into, a 2 or a 1. And he was it was an embarrassment of riches to bring in Edelman and have Tom Brady as your QB and have him grow with Brady. But now we can talk about the pick because this is what I said to you when the Niners lost the Super Bowl. I said the second half of this game, specifically in fourth quarter, Kansas City dared the Niners to beat them throwing the football past 5 yards. The Niners could not throw the football past 5 yards. The pass rush was getting in quickly. They were jumping the routes of the receivers, and the Niners did not have enough speed on the outside to make them pay for it. They were just daring them. Like, look, if you can get to the outside, you have an easy touchdown. I do not think you can do that in the short time before we hit your quarterback. So when you tell me that they were going to draft a receiver, my initial thought was it's got to be somebody with speed. We have the size in JJ. We have Kittle. We have McCaffrey out of the backfield. We have BA and Deebo doing stuff on the inside. We are missing someone to go to the outside. And it sounds like Shanahan believes that he's a well-rounded receiver, but a lot of the gimmicky stuff that he did in college leans a little bit more towards how the Niners use a mix of Christian and Deebo. But that would have been if they had used that pick to get some speed. And I literally don't know who that player would have been at 31. It's probably not there. You would have to have traded up.
But see, the thing of it is, though, is number one, I've watched a lot of Ricky
Florida.
Pearsall, but because their coach Billy Napier used to coach at Louisiana Lafayette, which is one of the places I went to school. So I follow Billy Napier. So I follow Florida. And I mean, he's a good player, but he's a slot in the NFL. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what he is. He's not an X. He's not gonna go outside. And I mean, like those kind of guys, the Welker, Amendola,
Puka.
those kind of guys are good comps. I mean,
Yeah.
that I think Puka would be the gold standard of that,
Yeah.
but he could be that type of player. But again, I just don't see when again, and all of this draft stuff is projections.
Yeah.
But when you look at how the draft board has fallen and how everybody has talked about this being a like an eclipse like wide receiver draft, and you look at some of the wide receivers like Mitchell, some of the guys who came off the board after him, like there was a run right at the top of the second round, of guys that there were several guys there that fit the description of what you're looking for. Talking about 4-3 guys with production. Like again, the one that jumps off the board at me is Mitchell from Texas, who, while everybody was floored by Worthy's 4.21, Mitchell was the better receiver. I mean, he was the more productive receiver.
Right.
But I get the Chiefs for what they do. Worthy is probably perfect because they're not asking him to be the X. They're not asking him to be wide receiver one. They need him to just do the things that he does.
Right.
So that doesn't make sense. Couple that with the fact that they talked about how the offensive and defensive lines were thin.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't take a player higher, you're going to be dealing with a bunch of projects later on, and that is just what has that's what's happening. Again, we don't know. I say and I'm not saying we kicked the first round pick, because Pearsall could turn out to be a great player, or good player, or whatever, but it doesn't seem like it's hard to say whether or not these guys are going to be players, but it doesn't seem like we're going to get anybody through wherever who's going to help us
Immediately
now.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge if the goal is New Orleans. But maybe that's not the goal anymore. Maybe that is, the organizational objective has changed. I don't know that, but that's what it kind of looks like to me from all the other moves. So that's, I can't lie, that's kind of disappointing. When you feel like you were pretty damn close. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we did I guess I shit on them a lot after the Super Bowl, but they did a lot of good things. There were a lot of good things that happened. We didn't make any plays on the defensive end at the end of the game. And we couldn't, like you said, we couldn't get it blocked to give Brock the time. Kyle was able to scheme up several opportunities, but we couldn't block it long enough to give Brock the opportunities running for his life, so he can't see the opportunities that are out there.
So much so that offensive linemen were on Twitter going like, "No, that wasn't my fault. Why you guys keep blaming me?"
So one would have thought, at least that was what my thought was. That was why I thought that defensive line and interior offensive line would come in and be a priority. And they have signed a bunch of guys,
Yeah.
but just guys. I mean, I don't know. I just, people want to, I just don't get the two things can be, because I still roll with Eric Armstead. He's gone, but I'm not going to shit on him because he's not here. He was a good player here. He got hurt playing for us. It wasn't like he was out, like he was hurt all the time because he was out riding ATVs and falling off and shit. So, I mean, I think it's shitty to criticize a guy for getting hurt playing and then playing hurt and not being as effective, because there are often times when he probably could have just shut it down.
That is the decision that a lot of these football players make, that has to be so hard, because if you shut it down, you have 52 dudes in that locker room to look in the eye. Some of them may understand, some of them who have probably been in your shoes, but the it just seems like, the mentality
The
of
culture there doesn't
players is,
allow for that.
yeah, it's just you play through it. Every year you're gonna be hurt. Roger Goodell wants to add an 18th game, at some point, which, we knew it, he wasn't
Mhm.
gonna stop at 17. But just this idea that these players play such a brutal sport, and add some extra roster slots if you're going to do that. Add some
Exactly.
more jobs so that these, there could be more players who are
There are
healthy.
so many ways that this billion-dollar business still acts like a mom and pop operation. Like, there are you saw that report. There are still places in the league where you got to pay for your lunch. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's ridiculous that when they added these extra games, they didn't expand the rosters. I guess they made a half measure where they expanded the practice squad.
Yeah.
Um, but you can't tell me that you can't afford the extra $3 million a team.
Difference
That it,
between the baseball and basketball unions and the football union.
it's just you can't tell me that you can't afford you can't afford, because again, the most ridiculous thing on earth to me is that these, like when you look at the juice conversation, look, the league is having record profits, this team is having record profits and has never been worth more, but we need you to take a pay cut. Doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It just doesn't. These conversations are ludicrous to me, that we are nickel and diamond. Pardon me. Still got part-time officials. It's just this is. But we're playing more games overseas, which I love because I love to travel. But it's just incongruous how they run their business.
And they are more popular than ever, making more money than ever. And so if that is happening, you're actually, here's your output, and you're doing gangbusters. Like, what motive does Roger Goodell have to make any changes except the players union being unsatisfied and maybe even aggressively so? Um,
And so what ends up, I think those other two examples you use show you a blueprint. And what happens is, if you get enough guys who are making enough money, that they are able to build a war chest to be able to withstand, because that's exactly, I was alive to watch that happen with baseball, is that the salaries just started to increase and increase and increase and increase. And them guys had money and were just like, no, we're just not doing this.
well,
And
but it's why average quarterbacks make $10 million a year,
right,
because you take care of that position. That is the glory position. That is the
the
face of
quarterback
the league
club,
position.
it was basically a union inside of a union that they held strong, which now, all these years later, you know, Tom Brady talks about how, everybody used to hold him up as this paragon, as how he sacrificed and took less. And he's like, that was dumb, because I was short-sighted in
Yep.
doing that. And
Yep.
that's why I don't ever think you'll see that again. Like, this notion that somehow Brock is going to take less. I think that's foolish. I don't think you're ever going to see a quarterback do that again,
If there is
because
any sport that you need to take every last possible dollar, it's football, because your career
yep,
could end tomorrow.
yep, yep. And if you slip at all, they are gonna walk away from your ass quick as hell. Don't you think that they won't look at Russell Wilson? They're like, man, we will pay you not to be here. And when you've got deep pocket owners like the Walton family, they can do that. They canned his ass before his extension even kicked in, and won't miss that money at all. That's
The
so
the
crazy.
the 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 poster child for what you just said is Terrell Davis, right?
Yeah,
Terrell Davis behind that Mike Shanahan run game was the greatest football player going at that point. Then he gets hurt, loses a step,
it's a
and they just
wrap.
start drafting his
Mhm.
replacement. Like
Yep.
just like, you're probably not gonna be that guy. So we got to prepare to replace you with who could possibly be that guy. And you look at Terrell Davis and you go, dang, remember when he was good? And
Hmm.
he was, I don't know how soon he was out of the league, but it was not that
It was
long.
not that long. It was not that long. So again, I agree. You take the money when you get the money, and this nonsense about loyalty to the team it just seems foolhardy to me because they are not going to be loyal to you.
Yeah. All right. Let me read the Dane Brugler report here on Pearsall. So and you can tell me since you saw him if you
Mhm.
agree. To-year starter, Florida, Pearsall was schemed across the formation in head coach Billy Napier's offense, doing most of his work from the slot, 62%. After 3 seasons at Arizona State, including time spent learning from Brandon Aiyuk in 2019, he moved on to Florida in 2022, had a career season in 23, leading the Gators in receiving. With his play speed and footwork, Pearsall earned the nickname Slick Rick because of the rhythmic movements he uses to shake free in his routes or make a defender miss in the quick game, and his ability to spit rhymes. Now, that was just me because of Slick Rick. Though he can be outmuscled at times versus press or at the top of his routes, he has Velcro hands and never shies away from attacking throws that lead him into impending contact. Overall, not a home run hitter on tape, but he is reliable with route quickness and ball skills to quickly become a favorite target for an NFL quarterback. He has the skill set and toughness to work inside or outside. I didn't see a high grade for the pick. I think I saw B minus maybe what was the highest. I don't really give a crap about those things because I think you should only give grades like maybe 5 years out
Mhm.
from what happened. But hey, the fan base eats this stuff up, so that is why it is there.
Mhm.
Does that fit with what you saw?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. The only question, the biggest question I had right after the pick is in a world where no block, no rock is supposed to be a thing. I don't know how the hell you think you're gonna bring Ricky Pearsall in here because I've never seen him make a block. So I don't know. I don't again, and that if he's your gadget guy, if he's Ray Ray McLeod, that's fine. But
Yeah,
I think if you draft him in the first round, it doesn't make sense that you don't project him at some point being, you know, a one or a two. I would think. I don't know. Maybe they feel that they're so confident they can just draft wide receiver threes and fours at this point. But those things are incongruous. If you're trying to shop Deebo in BA, it it just none of it makes sense to me. It all is just crazy to me. But I think he can be a fine player. I don't know. I agree that his ceiling. I don't. I don't. Again, I think like those Nakua or Cup comparisons are super optimistic. I mean, those are like best case scenarios. But I just don't see that. I think a guy like Edelman or Welker, it would be a better comp. So we'll see. Like you say, we won't know for 3 years whether or not it's. But what I do know is what it's going to be interesting in those 3 to 5 years when we come back to see from Harrison on down to whoever the last one is. There are some guys that have been taken today that I think have a really really good shot at being up at the top of this or later in the first round, particularly another LSU receiver like Neighbors is really good, but the one who went to Brian Thomas, who went to Jacksonville, it would not surprise he literally the comp that people are talking about in Louisiana is between Chase and Jefferson versus um the two receivers there. I'm losing the other one right now. Neighbors and Thomas.
Harrison? Oh,
No,
okay.
Habers and Neighbors and Thomas. I think it, and how Chase was the one there,
Right,
but
right.
then JJ ended up being so far the better pro. It would not surprise me if Brian Thomas is the best player in the best receiver in this draft. It's just
Interesting.
it's gonna be interesting to see how all these guys shake up. That's fine. Pearsall, again, I think it might be a little bit of hubris. It might be a little jealousy of Kyle seeing, Sean McVay with Puka and Cup and thinking I want me one of them and watch what I can do with it, or the fact that, like you said, there's a bit of hubris with him that, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'll make whoever's here, I'm going to make them.
Well, I just sort of see, like, I think of the way Kyle probably sees the chips, uh, or again, the chess pieces on the board, and he probably thought if we put Pearsall and get what we expect to get out of him, we could have put him in spots last year where it would have been positive and, we could have done different things, or like, I think he thinks of like, if we have him, I can run this play, which I couldn't actually run last year because we didn't have the guys to run. Like, I'm sure it's some of that, and it's that there's a lot of talent for Brock, and it's another weapon for Brock. But at the same time, I just wonder if the pieces fit and they're not too similar to what we already have.
But see, the thing about that, I don't disagree with that. Maybe you're right. Maybe there are plays that when because I'm sure that just obviously the Super Bowl is probably freshest in his mind, and he thinks there are plays that maybe he could have got Pearsall that makes a difference. I still don't understand why through free agency and now I guess the last pick that we took was a tackle who everybody seems the consensus is
Is it going to be
that
a
he's
guard?
a guard or center and a swing reserve player kind of at that. I mean, I don't, so basically we just drafted Daniel Brunskill. Um, I, I don't, so I don't understand the lack of urgency to fix that part. Maybe they have some kind of scheme or plan for duct taping that I don't see where it is because I mean I don't know. I think I've seen enough of Spencer Burford to say that he's not very good. Um and I think I'm getting there with McKivitz. He was better, but I don't know how much better is better. He was, you get that thing where in boxing you'll see that a lot where a guy will be getting his ass kicked and then a he'll get the round scored in his favor because he lost it less worse
Less.
than the other one. So they just gave him a pity, give him a pity point. So I don't. That is concerning to me. And then also, I guess they did address the defensive line with a bunch of meh, and maybe they are able to cobble together that meh to make. But again, the thing that I saw from the last game that we watched them play is that we didn't have anybody who could make a play, and I didn't see that they added anybody. You can tell me Leonard Floyd made plays, but Leonard Floyd didn't make plays. Leonard Floyd made plays because when you look at, I'm not saying he didn't make plays. Leonard Floyd, the thing that's telling about Leonard Floyd's stat line is he had a bunch of sacks, but nothing else. He didn't have any hits. He didn't have any hurries. He didn't have any, they were all sacks, which tells me when playing on the other side of a dominant defensive player, you get a lot of single teams. And they say his motor is good. So he's going to run up on double digit sacks just by, continuing to work. But that's, a worker is not what you need at we need another Chris Jones type player, somebody who is going to make game changing plays in game changing moments, and that was what I that was what I was hoping would happen this offseason, and heretofore it hasn't.
Yeah, no, I very much understand, and it's the thing about football is there can be so much turnover, and the way that rosters are put together with the way that the cap works and these bonuses and this dead money, it is really hard to keep these teams together. Now, I think we're pretty lucky in that from 2019 until now, we've had the assortment of really, really good, valuable players who have been able to stick around. And what kind of what you're saying is they may be preparing for when this is not going to happen. When what all we want is we just want one more shot. Like, we can see 2 years down the road, we wanted that one shot, and for whatever reason, because of Brock's contract or whatever, that they were unable to really make that big splash like they did last year with Hargrave. Now, possibility of Hargrave improving in the system, in the next year, maybe that is a giant hope, but he's definitely not going to be the run stopper that they need. So that's going to be something that they need to get. They need to figure that out. Who's going to plug that hole? But maybe they expect the pass rush a little bit to come from up the middle in that spot, and maybe Floyd as the never say die guy. He ends up with some sacks just by continuing to push, and it's other guys who are actually creating that opportunity for him.
And I'm not poo-pooing that signing because he is a pro and he's gonna be where he is, and he's not as talented as somebody like Chase Young, but he's going to play the game like it's supposed to be played. And he's not gonna put the defense in binds trying to get numbers. He gets his numbers just based on his effort, which is fine. I mean, that's perfectly okay. I don't know. I guess in the back of my mind, what I have always kind of secretly hoped is that, and the Hargrave signing, and then the Mooney signing the year before that was like maybe Jed, the worm is turning, and he's gonna, like Cronky style, just spin to get that championship, and then deal with.
Then you got to do like the Rams did and just take a
deal
couple
with
years off.
Yeah, you deal with the aftermath of that. And we just, I think we've talked about this before. At least I have, and I know people get sick of hearing it, but I think we are moving closer and closer to two different leagues, and you're going to have the haves and the have-nots, and the haves are going to rule the day because the cap can be manipulated with cash, and if you've got cash and you're willing to spend it, you can manipulate things. And until and unless they change the salary structure like they did to fucking submarine my Warriors, and not who didn't give a fuck about whatever, we'll just spend it. And so for some reason the league, just the other owners are like, we don't want Lacob to just be able to buy his way to more championships, which I think is ridiculous. So unless the NFL figures out some way to, because they're not going to stop bringing these you know, billionaire owners in. I think that is the wave of the future. Is
Yeah.
just these guys are anybody who buys a team is going to have to be like super rich, and those guys don't seem to care about spending the money. So it's just going to marginalize the McCaskies and the Yorks and the Browns of the world, who just don't have the cash to spend around like that. And it's going to be interesting to see if and how the league, because the majority of the even to right now, the majority of the owners are those kind of owners: the Krafts, the Joneses, the Waltons now, Josh Harris in Washington, Tepper in Carolina, and the list goes on. They are Ross in Denver. I mean, in Miami. All these guys are super rich guys. So I don't think they're gonna be keen on Roger putting handcuffs on them. Um, so it's
I
gonna
don't know. Tepper might be fine with it. He said, "Yeah, Bill Belichick not good enough to join my staff."
I guess ridiculous, but yeah. Um, so it's gonna be interesting to see. So I guess Jed is not gonna blow the York forced war chest on 2024 as I was hoping. So I guess we'll have to figure out,
Well, okay. So think about how Jed gets his money. That stadium is sold out without them winning a Super Bowl, right? Every ticket
Mhm.
is sold for all of those home games. The TV money is fantastic, but it is also split up equally amongst everybody. And then, they have their own local rights and that is in that money is independent from the other owners. But he knows exactly, probably almost to the penny, how much money this team is going to make over the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. Now, I'm sure some of it could go up or down based on their popularity with, merchandise and some of these other deals that they can make, but he knows pretty much the lay of the land down the line. And so, if he's thinking about what you're saying that you think that they're thinking about, yeah, our roster goes up every year, and then we got to add 50 more $1 million. Like, how do we do that? Because you can't unless and then this would be big time hubris unless we'll see what happens on the next the Saturday's rounds. They think they could draft another Brock, and by the time Brock is ready to be a free agent, they're like, hey, anybody got a number one pick hanging out there for this dude?
Yeah. Well, I mean I just I don't know. Maybe I was just too young that I didn't understand it. But even at that time, looking back, it never seemed to me like Eddie D was like running this to like make a profit. It seemed like he was about winning and was like, and I understand it's different. It was a different time, but like I say, you see these ultra rich dudes doing basically a lot of the same things. You can just kick that can down the road. Would you extend these contracts? You give them cash bonuses, and you kick them down the road, kick them down the road. Eventually, there's going to be a reckoning with the cap. Yes, but like I say, that the example that I continue to use is Cronky was like, okay, we'll deal with that when we got to deal with that. But like again, like Brian Windhorst says, if you get a championship, all of it is worth it.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the way I feel about it, especially now that we're in a position where again, my kids have never seen us win a championship. They've seen us lose 2 games,
Mm-hmm.
something that I never at their age saw. We never lost a Super Bowl. So
No.
now so I guess those are the kind of things that color my viewpoint of it.
God,
And
have we really lost 3 Super Bowls now?
that's crazy.
Dang.
That's crazy. We're damn near 500. That is, when we were like 1,000 for
Yeah,
such a long
5 and
time.
0.
Yeah, just so crazy. That is so crazy.
All right, before we get out of here, we should talk about these other 2 picks. You mentioned the guard. We'll talk about him in a second. They traded down with the Chiefs of all teams. They traded down 1 spot to pick up a 5th rounder while giving up a 6th rounder so the Chiefs could get their player. And they drafted Renardo Green at number 64. Now, I thought your comment in our Discord was very interesting with this pick because one of the things that was mentioned was the physicality and the ability to press. And then the one thing that is sort of negative on his talent board here is he's not necessarily athletic enough to recover when he cannot get that physicality with that receiver in the way that he wants. So, um, I, when you said in the Discord, you're like, you can only touch the guy after within 5 yards. I
And
started
when you look
laughing.
and when you look at the tape that I've seen of him, there's a whole lot of clutching and grabbing that goes on that's just not going to happen in the
Hmm.
NFL. And immediately when I saw him, the player that came to mind was Josh Norman.
Mm.
2000, and it's not Josh Norman's fault. They changed the game on
Yeah.
Josh Norman in 2015. Josh Norman was an all-pro player, and then they changed the game on him completely, and all that clutching and grabbing was gone. And if you look at his penalties, they skyrocket in 16, and he was just never the same player. So that's the thing I don't know about. If he has to clean that up, and he can't just, when you talk about pressing, that pressing in the NFL, you're not going to be ragdolling. Dude, they show me on tape in the last 3 years where you've seen any corner allowed to put his hands on a receiver and control him, and they just don't. That's not what Roger wants to see. He wants to see these dudes. He wants points. So I just don't. I think if they had drafted him in, you know 2014, it might be a good pick. I just don't. I hope it works out.
He
I
was
mean,
he,
and
he was he
and,
was
and
only
Mel,
like 13 years old back then, though.
yeah, and Mel says that, and you take that with a grain of salt. Mel says it was a super reach. So
Okay, so I'll read. I won't read the whole thing of Brugler's breakdown, but the last paragraph says overall, Green is a polarizing prospect among NFL teams because he doesn't have desired size, speed, or ball tracking skills, and won't be a fit for every scheme. But his play personality and ability to find his balance mid coverage helps him stay connected and will give him a chance to earn a meaningful role in NFL secondary. Now, here's a trivia question for you. When is the last time the Niners took a corner in the first 2 rounds?
have we taken one since Mike Rumph?
It's Mike Rumph.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of that sounded like Mike Rumph.
I was just about to say, very similar. So,
Oh, I've been here too long.
and then I don't know
Too
who
much organizational knowledge.
Nick Baumgartner is necessarily, but he graded the pick as a C plus. Said he's small and might have issues with stronger receivers on the outside or in the box. The tackle board is sort of wiped out here at this point in the draft, so he didn't mind seeing them go corner, but he thought there were better corner
Right.
options.
And that's
Uh,
the thing is that it's again, it's one of those things that is a paradox. You talk about his strengths are his press skills, but that description that my man said sounds like his strengths really are as a zone corner, and that's what we run, and rightfully so. Um, I know I was talking to somebody today about we was talking because the Eagles ended up taking Cooper DeJean, my draft crush, and we're
Wasn't that
talking.
who the Niners were rumored at in the
I don't
first
know if
round?
we're gonna. I don't know if we're gonna get to that, but I don't know if you saw. I posted it in the
You did post
Discord
about that, about
that
the leak, who's the leak in the
who
system.
exactly. So I hadn't heard that they were gonna take him. I was hoping he would take him, but Fangio, when he got fired or left Miami, both Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey were shitting on him because they're both very good man corners, like two of the best in the league. But his system doesn't allow for man coverage. It's all, cover two, cover three, cover six. He's the godfather of the modern NFL defense
Mhm,
and simply clearly doesn't have the bandwidth to. So he's one of those old school guys that
mhm.
the system is the system
Yeah.
and the players fit the system. I don't adjust the system to fit the player, which theoretically makes sense because those unicorns who can play man to man, they are unicorns. So if you're going to devise a system to play, you probably are better off devising a system that doesn't require guys to be able to man up because you're just not going to be able to find them. So, corners that are able to play in the Fangio slash Shanahan system are much easier to find. But the question is, were there better corners on the board when we took the corner that we took? And again, we won't know that for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right, the last pick was, the guard tackle that you talked about, Dominic, is it Puny or Pooney?
Pooney is what they were
Pooney.
saying on the.
Dominic Pooney from Kansas. Now, this pick was a little bit more highly regarded just because, I think he slid a little bit. Not very fast, but he's really big, and they keep talking about his bend. I don't I kind of understand what they're talking about, but
Mhm.
explain what the bend is when they're talking about offensive linemen.
It's just he's able to get down and he's able to get his ass down and he's not playing up high. He's down low and able to punch and play within the posture that you want. He doesn't, like get up on his toes or, stand up straight. He's able to maintain his leverage throughout the block, which is a good thing. But again, this, like my man said, and the thing is that, the offensive linemen, based on the depth on the board now, that's why there were better linemen on the board when we took Pearsall, and
Mhm.
there were still wide receivers on the board that were, I don't know if they're as good as Pearsall, but they, if you're trying to strike a balance, there were still players that people think can be players at receiver, where it looks like at this point all of these interior linemen on both sides of the ball are kind of flyers from here on out. So I mean, you clearly obviously will get some guys who develop into players, but um yeah, it seems like the consensus is that there aren't any plug and play guys left. So for a team that, again, I was hoping would be, I was hoping that we could get at least one guy that we could plug in and play immediately, and then we hope that either Banks figures it out, or Burford figures it out, or we can move Brindle to one of the guards. That we're able to shake things up
Mhm.
and cobble together something that resembles um, a competent line, especially with our quarterback. We need to, it's, if you look at the old Saints model, they were always super big in the interior from guard to guard because Breeze wasn't a big guy and he
Right.
needed those guys to maintain the pocket so he could see and operate and do what he's doing. And I just believe that that's what Brock needs. If you're all in on Brock, you need to be all in on solidifying that guard to guard position even more. I think they're more important for what he does than even the tackles are. So hopefully at some point we, you know, address that for his sake.
So circling back to Pearsall, and then we'll get out of here. Um, Aiyuk obviously very happy with the pick. He knows the guy. Um, Brock, they're both from Arizona, so it sounds like they're gonna, hook up a lot during this spring summertime. And what'd you think about CJ Stroud's comments? Like that seems to be what 49er fans who were like, "Oh, I don't know." But wait, CJ Stroud loves this guy. Says he's the man. Like, and so I
Well,
think they were trying to talk themselves into it.
and again, that's why I always that the BA comment is a perfect example that you can never take any of these comments player to player at face value, positively or negatively, because I can guarantee you what I know about football players
Mhm.
is if it's a negative comment, there's a backstory to that. And if there's a positive comment, there's a backstory to that. So to find out that they were at Arizona State together,
Mhm.
that's not to say that he's not a good player. But again, it's just what players do. I remember the whole kerfuffle when Patrick Willis got was in was announced as a Hall of Famer, and people asked dumbass questions like Brock or Cap. And he said Cap because the players are gonna always pick their guy. They're always gonna pick their guy, and it doesn't have any. And it doesn't have. It has little to do. Because I've seen it. It has little to do with their ability as a
Mhm.
player. I have seen
Patrick Willis is
guys,
not watching
but
every snap of that Brock
again,
Purdy
but
takes.
but but you but you hear listen to how passionate Ray Lewis talks about Trent Dilfer,
Mhm.
or Warren Sapp talks about whichever the Brads was there. I think that
Brad
was Brad
Johnson.
Brad Johnson. Though that's his quarterback.
Yeah.
You know,
This is leader, the leader of his team.
so he's not here for, again, he's like me with Clay. I don't want to hear no Clay slander. I'm I'm not here for your stats and reality. I don't talk down talk Clay.
Do you
You
see what
know,
do you see what they did to D'Angelo Russell the other day?
mm-mm.
Because so D'Angelo Russell, I think it was actually last night. D'Angelo Russell had a tough,
Yeah,
tough, tough game. I think he
that was
was
tough. Over.
yeah, he was an offer. And so they called it, so basically the Stat Muse Twitter account put his stats as 0.047, 0 for 6 3-pointers, but instead of D'Lo, they put a picture of Clay. So poor Clay's catching these strays. And I think they were also calling him Clayangelo Russell. And
Oh,
my thought was, I actually liked D'Angelo Russell. I liked when he was on the Warriors. He's not a great fit for Steph Curry to play near
mm-hmm.
Steph Curry, but I like the way he plays. He's not afraid to take shots. He's a little bit overconfident. He does disappear sometimes. I'm sure when LeBron gets mad at him, he probably kind of, loses a little bit of confidence. But Clay and D'Angelo Russell, there's a wide gap of like
Yeah,
baller in between,
yeah.
right? And so I'm just like, really? Like we're already putting Clay in these jokes. The guy has 4 championships. Like,
And bro, what we're talking about with Clay is not like, okay, maybe age has something to do with it, but
It's
I
those
think
damn
it's
injuries.
way more because we see that players are playing longer,
Mhm.
and I know that Clay is a worker. It's the injuries. I mean,
Yeah.
who comes back from an ACL and then an Achilles? It's hard to do. That's what I was, you know, since we're talking football, it's like when people were talking about let's sign Trey White. I'm an LSU guy, so I love Trey White, but I mean, you talking about signing a corner who's coming off an ACL and an Achilles. I've seen that show. And Clay is not playing cornerback. I don't think
Wait,
that.
wait, did Balky draft him to stash for a year?
Oh man, it's crazy. So yeah, it's crazy. The Clay slander. I'm
Yeah.
not here for it. He
The
is.
Warriors summer is gonna be it's gonna be maddening. I was gonna say fun, but I think it's gonna be maddening because the Mike Dunleavy is never going to be able to do what the fans want, which is to put, you know, Anthony Davis next to Steph or an Anthony Davis like player next to Steph. We've had Steph, we take him for granted. We don't put that guy next to him. Like, save for KD obviously, but I think they're probably going to make some really smart moves. They're going to make some really fiscally smart moves as well. But it's not going to be enough because the only thing that's enough for Warriors fans is to be in the NBA finals every year.
Man, well, we need why I get how they've hamstrung Laker, but why can't we like put together, I don't know, this all-star team of scouts and go and try to find us three or four of these heat culture guys that nobody knows about. I guess the basketball world is so flat now that it's not like back in the 90s
Yeah.
when they were able when Nelly was able to send people over there to bring Marshallonis and
Yeah.
guys like that here. But yeah, it's just you know, I would we like you say, I'm not unrealistic about championships, but I would like a few more Pajemskis and Davis Prices and like Moses Moody type. If we just get like three or four more of those guys, I would be
Well,
like he's
the thing is the Warriors have Steph Curry, son of Del Curry, Klay Thompson, son of Michael Thompson, uh, T, uh, TDP, son of Dale Davis, and Andrew Wiggins, son of Mitchell Wiggins. I think they just need to go find these old head NBA players
mm-hmm.
who have kids and go, let's just go draft 3 of them and one of them will work out.
That's a good that's a great strategy. That's
Yeah,
a
like,
great strategy.
uh, Tim Duncan, you ever have any kids? Like,
Mm-hmm. You have any secret girlfriends and maybe they have some kids?
exactly, exactly. All right, we're gonna get out of here, but this was a lot of fun, and I think if anybody is traded, if Aiyuk or Deebo are traded, which I can't imagine that happens now, because if it would have happened, it would have happened yesterday before the draft started, because you don't want to trade and then get a pick next year.
Next year, that'd be a
That'd be
disaster.
ridiculous. So I think we're good. And Debo even said, he's like, yeah, I knew what was going on, but I'm chilling. He's like, I'm ready to, I'm fine
Mhm.
on my team. So I don't think anything's going to happen. But if the Niners do something, on the next day, then maybe we'll figure out a way to come back a little earlier. But we'll sort of check in. I'll check in with you every 2 weeks. Is there something to talk about? No, then maybe we move it back, or maybe there will be stuff to talk about so we can check in. But it's a long time until September. But we should try to do a few shows every now and again so that
Oh, but
you know
but yeah, we'll have rookie mini camps and
yeah.
OTAs and then training camp. So later in the summer we'll start to ramp back up. But yeah, I think we are like you say, unless something I just can't imagine what that would be at this point. we're cruising into a dead period now. I mean, I guess BA could sign an extension.
Yeah.
I doubt that
I mean,
somehow.
it's probably gonna happen in August,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
think
that's what
so.
always
I
happens.
think he won't be in training camp, and yeah. So like I say, I would I'd be shocked if at this point, an extension happens. But if we do, we'll definitely come and talk about it, and I'll say I was wrong.
It's, it's a little weird with the Warriors because the first 2 years that we did, the death lineup, first year we did it, they won the championship. Second year we did it, they advanced the second round of playoffs, and so Brian and I are just watching playoffs and waiting for the Olympics, and,
Mm.
we're even gonna check in. I wanna watch a little bit more WNBA, so we'll probably talk a little bit more WNBA with the Bay Area team coming next year, so we
I am
will have.
so jealous of these teams like the Pels and
Yeah,
OKC with all these
these
young
young guys.
players and all these picks I mean, it's just like they're like perfectly set up, and
Mhm.
I look at my squad and I mean, but shit, 4 and 8 years. I mean, what are I can't hardly complain. But
I
it's
mean, the
still,
Warriors similarly did it, right? When you can draft Steph, Clay, and Draymond in, like, 3 those guys in, like, within 4 years of each other or whatever it was, you're hitting and you're taking shots, and you're doing all of that smart stuff, and then as the way the NBA works is once you get on top of the mountain, the idea is not necessarily to stay there, at least in the
Mhm,
NFL, it's not. The idea is a little bit of parity, so all these other teams get a
mhm,
chance, and so they just make it really hard for you to do it. And the Warriors were able to get KD. The Warriors were able to win that 22 championship, so they
and
stayed on top a lot
and
longer than I think
and and
people
and
thought.
I'm in the minority, I think, amongst Warrior fans, at least in my circle, that I don't want to see any of those. I mean, Steph's not going anywhere,
Yeah, you
but
don't want to.
I don't want
I want to ride with them.
I don't want to see Clay or Draymond playing. I don't want to see Draymond in LA. I don't want to see Clay in LA. I would just prefer that we let them ride off, and it doesn't look, Clay. I mean, Steph is still an All NBA performer, so
Yeah,
he's not riding off into any sunsets anytime soon. And Draymond, when Draymond was healthy and playing, he's still. I mean, he's not. I mean, he was hitting threes and shit this year. It was at the end of the season. It was
it was not about his on court. He was excellent
yeah,
when he was on the court. It's just he was not on the court all the time,
yeah,
and the
and
time
it's
and
just
he's such a valuable player that he does so many unique things when he's missing. It's like when Steph is missing. Like,
yeah,
you feel it
yeah.
because the team on defense is designated and built around him, much like on offense, it is built around Steph. So when those guys are missing from games, there's a giant hole that no one really has a skill set to fill, and so you have
And
to
then
play different.
you can't say Draymond don't do Draymond things, because Draymond things are the things that make Draymond special. I mean, he's him playing on the edge is you can't have him not with his toe on the line. It's just not. But I could talk Warriors all day. We probably
He
need to
put
go home.
he it wasn't that long ago. He put Rudy Gobert in a rear naked choke.
And that didn't bother me. I'm sorry. So maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah.
I'm an enabler for Draymond.
Yeah, Nurkic gets on my nerves, so when he
Yeah.
slapped Nurkic in the face, I was like, "Ah, that sucks," but it doesn't suck that much.
Yeah. I wish
Alright.
I wish I could slap Nurkic.
Alright, that's it from here. Rod and I will be back at some point. We'll let the Discord know and such, and we'll get the thing up on YouTube. So if you have your notifications set, subscribe on YouTube. You can find everything on bspnmedia.com. That is kind of the catch-all for everything. So, alrighty, for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.